Hello, and welcome to Sacred MIndshift Circle. I'm your host, Dahlia Deborah Donalds. Today, I have a very special guest. He's from Massachusetts, a brilliant guitarist, a wonderful father, and a recovery specialist to fostering a supportive environment for individuals in substance use recovery programs. He is most active on YouTube, where he showcases his music, but also his targeting experiences. His podcast, Digital Minds Deciphered, explored all the different gangstalking tactics implemented on many targeted individuals across the US and the world. Welcome, Stephen Dubuque. Correct?
Thank you. Yes, you got it right. I'm impressed.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hi guys. I'm Stephen. Yeah. How would you like to start, Dahlia? Would you like me to just tell you when I notice my targeting, stuff like that?
Yeah. So let's go back, because I think also we're going to go back into how it started. And I really like to emphasize the year that it started, because ironically, a lot of people had a lot of stuff going on that year. So let's hear a little bit how it started for you.
Yes, I've noticed that as well, because so I haven't been overtly targeted in almost 3 years. In 2 months, I'll have 3 years clean from drugs and alcohol. And I haven't noticed any targeting in that time period, but I still actively am like researching it, looking up other people's testimonies with targeting and gang stalking, because it's still quite a big mystery. Exactly how it works, how it operates, who's behind it. But yes, that is also something I've noticed. 2021 seems like that. 2020, 2021, 2022, those are like the most common years that I've noticed from other people's testimonies is when this stuff started. My first thought is wondering if it has to do with either like the lockdowns from COVID or the vaccine, which I did end up getting one of those. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on 2021?
Well, like I said, ironically, that's exactly when my targeting experience began. Around 20, it was, because 2020 was the lockdown, and then it was going into 2021. About that time, my narrative started, and I started being accosted. And I have spoken, or I'm not really necessarily spoken to everyone that has been targeted, but other people who have had situations that were very strange or very life-altering experiences, and they were around that period. A lot of the information that I get or I've gathered about targeted individuals have been things that I've actually read on Quora from people just putting comments here and there. And again, you always have to be careful, because unfortunately, the way this works, or what's happening to us, you have a lot of people who get duped by infiltrators. There are people who will go in there and they'll try to pretend that they are also targeted individuals to kind of make us look as if like we're all just like, a bit strange or it's out of this world. But I really feel sometimes I think that whatever they were doing during COVID or lockdown, I don't know if the vaccines had something to do with upgrading these, and I'm going to call them entities, because for the most part, I don't know if you've seen my page, I really do believe that we are living in a scripted reality, a matrix. And I know it's cliche, because a lot of people say that, and you just say, okay, yeah, it's a matrix. And I used to listen to a lot of these kind of conspiracy theorist programs. But after also researching a lot of like Dolores Cannon information of our souls and the percentage of us that are on that are in this let's say reality, okay, I really do think that a lot of the people that we see around us are NPCs. They are I call them Sims. They're NPC. So what does this mean? This means that when you hear these experiences from targeted individuals saying that, like, okay, my sister's in on it, even my mom was in on it, so and so that I trusted, like all these people are just like turning up and supposedly being bought in NPC land. Yes, they could be being bought, but the idea is that they are loyal to the Matrix. They are loyal to the system. And I feel like, in my opinion, I don't know if the vaccines had something to do with like upgrading them or something, or, you know, but I feel like being in the Mediterranean has allowed me to observe them very, very well, especially a lot of patterns that had I been in New York with the bombardment of all the distractions, I wouldn't be able to see it so clearly as I can see it now. So when it comes to the vaccine and COVID, or, well, like I said, I feel like something that had something to do with it, and I feel it was like something to like upgrade these vessels. And also, I thought about the whole thing with CERN and timelines and strange shifting. And I know that sounds very sci-fi, but I feel like there's a lot of stuff going on, and you know, I feel like it has to do with something between these two theories, because it's a lot of coincidence, which I always say there's nothing coincidence in the Matrix. Everything is the Matrix, and the Matrix is everything. But it's too much coincidence that so many people have had life-altering events during this period.
Yeah. So if there's one thing that this targeting experience has taught me is how much I don't know about the world. It has taught me to be much more open-minded about things. Because before going through targeting, I felt like I was an NPC myself. Looking back now, I didn't believe in any kind of anything weird, any conspiracy theories. I just wrote it off as like silly, and why bother, looking into things like that? That doesn't make sense. So, while I don't know if I hold the same views as you do about like this being a simulation, but the idea, even Christianity, which I believe, I'm a Christian, and from listening to your testimony, I listened to most of it. I can tell you are too. You mentioned Christ a few times. Even that is like the Bible kind of puts forward some version of a matrix, not exactly, but in the sense that the world that we are living in and experiencing now is not the real world that matters. The real world is one that you can't see, filled with spirits, angels, demons, heaven, hell. So who knows? Who knows, man? I definitely lean towards. So I think, like, from a spiritual standpoint, that this stuff is utterly demonic. Like I have a speculation that this kind of targeting thing will be pretty actively used in like the end times. That's just a theory I have. But I also think that it's a lot of like technology, and that's what I lean towards. Like here, at least here in the simulation, I think that there is some kind of crazy tech that they're using that is hidden from us. That's my personal views.
So in relation to this, right, I wrote a book, and it's called Chosen by God and Targeted by the Devil. It's not finished being published, but it's in the works. And in that book, at that moment in the targeting, I, as you said, was convinced after realizing that these, and I call them NPCs, or these people that are doing the gangstalking, could read my mind. And I said, how are they doing that? And I said, okay. And in the book, I go into remote neural monitoring. And I said, this must be a thing, because look, they're doing these patents about it. They're talking about it. They're saying that these, this technology exists and it can be useful in the future to exonerate criminals, because it's a way of they make it look as if obviously that this is a technology that exists, right? A lot of the people who are gangstalk go into different types of technologies that are used with frequency. Yep. I have also been on the train zapped for visualizing.
Yep. I used to get zapped too in the legs a lot, and then I'd get a zap in the leg. I'd like wince from the pain, and I'd hear my V2K like laughing or like ha, like in perfect timing. So yeah, yep. So anyway, continue.
Yeah, I haven't heard actually necessarily like the V2K, but I have really good hearing, so I always attribute. But I hear from very far away, so I always attribute it to like they are purposely speaking for you to hear them. They basically, I call it simming. I created my whole vocabulary around this, and I said to myself, I'm like, they start simming, they start, and what I've noticed is on some occasions they have to interact with the other person to initiate the simming, because you could be standing next to someone and they could just be there. Someone will just come up to them from out of nowhere, and then they'll exchange like a topic that is talking about you for you to understand that they're talking about you. But it's as if like there has to be some kind of interaction to start it off. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, a lot of people refer to that as a directed conversation. They're not talking to you, but you're within your shot, and it's about you. It's meant to trigger you, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah. And another thing is that some people say, now people who from the more Christian side, okay, because it is demonic. It is demonic. And it's only done, if you notice, to the people who either have some kind of psychic ability, spiritual dawns, or they are a Christian majority of the time. So it could be that you're not aware that you have a soul and that you have a special calling, or that you're one of the souls that have come to this earth at this time to bring awareness and wake up the other people. And that's why they target you, because the devil's not going to target somebody who's nobody.
That's an interesting theory. I've thought about that too, the whole like chosen ones thing. And yeah, God knows who's gonna, even if that person's not a Christian now, God knows what their future is gonna hold. And so, yeah, that's possible.
So this is mainly when I go researching all of the people. These are some of the characteristics. Like they'll say, like, from when the time I was younger, this and this happened, or this and this happened, and they have either become more religious because of the experience, or they tend to go down the road, which I don't recommend, of thinking of it just mainly as some kind of attack from the government and technology. I personally think the technology may exist, but I feel like the technology exists to be a plausible, real reason versus a spiritual reason, so that you don't recognize that it's more demonic than physical.
That's interesting.
Because I have seen them without any phone in their hand, because usually, like they're always pretending they're looking at their phone, and I have seen them reading books with nothing in their hand, and they have acted like they've heard my thoughts. And I said, no, they are telepathic, because everything in the spiritual world is telepathic. They are telepathic. They don't need any phone. Okay. So therefore, there is a series, there's in Black Mirror in episode 3, there is a episode where I think it's called The History of You. If you ever check out Netflix.
Oh, I've seen that. Yeah, the entire history of us or something. Or maybe yeah. I know. I've seen it times. Yeah.
Where they can rewind all of the memories that have happened to a person. And when you're dealing with these, I call them Sims, when you go out into their presence, immediately it's as if when you walk into their field, or that they're a certain distance of them, it's as if they can also do the same thing, and they'll like act like they're seeing things that you said before, that you did before, because I don't like to go at it from an egotistical point of view, because it could be that our souls are the ones that are not supposed to be here, and they're the human ones, and they're all kind of acting. That's how this was, if they're the NPCs. So, but they are capable of knowing everything. They see everything in that sense. So when you hear these news reports like, yes, the government has just invested in 50,000 cameras across it's all a farce, because these people, they can see everything and they know everything. So they can't know and not know. They can't know and not know. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah.
So it comes into the narrative when these things are happening to us a lot of times. Okay, similar to mine was different. I don't know if you heard mine. Mine, I was accused of being like a snitch in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I just said that. Yeah.
It's a neighborhood here in the Mediterranean with certain demographics.
And then an agent, right?
Yeah. They've switched it up so many times. They've even made me different races and all, like so many, because I decree every single day confusion into the camp of the enemy. They've done so many lies that it's out of hand now, to the point where it took me leaving Barcelona, because it was happening in Barcelona from 2020 until December. And I had 3 years, just like you, where nothing was really happening. Like there were little rumors here and there, but for the most part, nothing was really, significantly happening. But right around the spring of 2023, I noticed like strange things started like happening at my job, because what the enemy does mostly is they do two things: or they distract you, or they try to lower your vibration. Okay, because this is about your consciousness, your focus, and your energy.
Mm-hmm.
They cannot create. We create, because we are extensions of God, and we really are the ones with the souls.
Right.
So we create with our beliefs. So they have to get to our head. It's a battle for the mind to make you focus on their lies, to collapse that reality.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
What do you think about, as far as your can you just give, because we started really fast, just give a little bit like of a little summary of what was your narrative about?
All right. Yeah. It is a long story, so I'll do my best to like just do the quick version. I don't know. I was in rehab yet again, struggling with all sorts of substances, meth, alcohol, and it was really weird. This time, like I was working for this company called Wayfair, online furniture company. They held my job for me while I went into rehab. And then while I was in rehab, the very short time I was there, they actually like reached out to me and found me an apartment to live in Pittsfield, which at the time I was very grateful for. I've never heard of a company doing that. I hadn't been there for that long, so it was, in retrospect, it almost seems like too good to be true. But I don't know. I moved into that apartment. Let's see. The landlord. To this day, I don't know if my landlord was the one who targeted me, but all the V2K I heard, I heard voices, V2K. Some people refer to it as. So I'd be like in my apartment, and someone would just be talking to me like I was on a phone call, but I didn't have a phone. It was like the voice sounded kind of like a little bit distorted, but like clear as day, and to the point where it's like I never thought like, oh, I'm hearing something in my head. I was thinking, where is the speaker that I'm hearing this from? How am I hearing this? Like, this doesn't make any sense. I'd be tearing apart the apartment looking for the source of the audio, and I never could find it. But anyway, so to this day, I think Richard, the landlord, had something to do with it, but I'm not positive. This stuff is so deceptive and confusing that I could be wrong about that. I don't know. But anyway, it started like it started with like my work computer at Wayfair. So that's why I think mine is, or I think a lot of this has to do with tech, because a lot of tech things were involved in when my targeting started. Like my work computer just started glitching like crazy. And this was a stay at home or work from home job during COVID, so I needed my computer to complete my shift. And just like, I've used computers my whole life, I know how to use I know how to use a computer, but whatever was being done to them was just making me unable to do my job. Like icons disappearing, menus that I needed for work just disappearing, things not opening when I click them, the mouse cursor moving by itself, just to the point where it was really like interfering with my work. So I'd be on tech support with them. They even like sent me another computer, and I was just like, man, what is going on with this? And then I'd be using my phones, and meanwhile I'm like I'm using drugs again. I relapsed shortly after I got out of rehab, and so that's just adding fuel to heightened confusion and agitation and just like what is going on, like what is happening. My phone's like I remember it clear as day. Like I had control over the screens with my fingers, but like somebody else had just as much control, opening things, clicking things. I'd be trying to get into the set, like the settings menu to like change, to see if somebody like changed my settings, and they did. There was like multiple users signed in on my phone. I remember that, like, and I was like the guest. They were using like accessibility settings so that my phone started like talking, like as if like a blind person was using the phone, kind of thing. Like that was the just weird stuff like that, stuff that I didn't enable. So I'd have to like if I wanted to like click something in the settings menu, I'd have to like put my phone down and use two fingers to do it. I'd have to like, I was like getting in a battle for control over my phone. And I thought that was extremely strange. Both now my work computer is hacked. My cell phone is hacked. I remember buying a new cell phone, and that one I couldn't activate it. Like I got everything I need to activate it. When I activated the phone, like it just didn't work. Somehow I was able to listen to a voicemail of somebody. This is a brand new phone I just bought. I used the information on the card to set up the phone. In doing so, I couldn't make calls. It wasn't activated, but I like checked the voicemail, and here I was listening to the voicemail of somebody else's phone. And I'm like, and I was just so confused. I was on so now I'm calling what was it, Metro PCS or something, for like help, the helpline. They couldn't figure it out. So it's just so that's how it started. All this hacking of my devices. And then all of a sudden my memory is so hazy from this time period. I couldn't tell you exactly when, but all of a sudden, like somebody was talking to me in my apartment. I didn't get gangstalked a lot. There was a little bit when I did go out, but I was such a hermit at this point. Like literally all I cared about was like, was getting drunk, getting high, occasionally having women over. That's like, and trying to keep my job. That was like my life at that point. And let's see. So yeah, I can't remember when it started, but all of a sudden somebody started talking to me, and I thought it sounded like the voice of my landlord, Richard, who had already and one thing worth noting, I guess, this all kicked off, all the hacking, the V2K, it all kicked off after this one particular night when I had some guests over, and we were using drugs, and like in the next day, like all night and into the early morning. Then the next morning, like my guests like were wandering in the hallways, making a scene, like, just like a sketchy scene, so that the neighbors called the cops. The cops came, and nothing really happened. Like the cops knocked on the door. I told them my guests have left. But then my landlord called, and he said, my landlord called, and he was like, "Hey, so what was going on?" Like I was like, "Oh man, we just drank a bit too much last night. Sorry, things got a little out of control." He's like, "Are you sure you were just drinking?" And I lied to him. I said yes, and I could tell he didn't believe me. So anyway, that was like what started. Like I was in that apartment for maybe a month with no problem, but after that night, that's when everything started. And that moment would later be referenced by my V2K as like, that he was like, "When you lied to me over the phone, that's when I decided to go after you," or something like that. So anyway, just so somebody always like berating me with insults through V2K, through a voice that I don't know where the source of it is, controlling my devices. I mean, I remember one time a video, I'm by myself, watching TV, and all of a sudden the TV changes. I believe it was a YouTube video, and this rap song starts playing, and I remember the lyrics. It was like Julia, Julia, I want to Julia, and and this was like personalized towards me because that was a girl who I had over a couple days prior, who I thought, it was in the privacy of my own home, now I'm seeing this rap video play with this girl's name, and it's also saying things like, this rap song is saying like, I hope your son dies. Like, I had my son over periodically. So now I'm just watching this, and that, like, just that video alone indicates that they're using some kind of, like, somebody put a lot of time into like showing me this song. It was like produced rap song with lyrics, personalized lyrics about people I had been having over my apartment in private. So yeah, that's what happened in the first apartment. That's a really, really shortened version. More stuff too, like visual stuff. And actually, I happened to watch one of your guests just briefly talk about like the Hat Man. Does that sound familiar? So there was nights. See, I don't personally. I don't. I still think this is technology. I know we disagree there. I think that, but in any event, there was this one night where he just wouldn't let me sleep, and there was this like shadow figure on the wall, like looming over me with like, it looked like a pilgrim hat or maybe a top hat, and just like it would like grow. I'm just sitting there in bed like looking at this, like, what the hell is this? Like looking around, like, where is this coming from? And like the outline of the mouth is moving as I'm hearing V2K. Just wild stuff, man. Like and the whole time I was going through this, I'm like, no one is ever gonna believe this, you know. I didn't know about targeting or gang stalking. I've never. It just creeps me out to even think about. I mean, he would say nasty stuff, like I remember like thinking that my clothes were like bugged or somehow unhealthy, so I'd be naked in my bed, and this male voice would be commenting on me, and I just remember things like that. I'm like, man, are you enjoying this? Like, what, are you gay or something? And then I remember this clear as day. He's like, oh, sexuality is a very fluid thing these days. And I was just like, gross, man. Like, why do I have to deal with this? Like, I'm like getting berated, insulted, my privacy being invaded. Um, so yeah, I did not deal with. I think I was starting to say earlier, I didn't deal with gang stalking much because I literally never left my apartment. I'd leave the apartment like to get booze, and I was getting my drugs delivered in the mail, so I didn't have to leave anywhere to get those or deal with people. I'd occasionally get food, Anyway, that's what happened at the first apartment. So I'm just gonna. That's the most of what happened in the first apartment. I had like, and I remember I had like three months. I lost my job. I got fired for attendance from a work from home job. Only an addict could be able to manage that. But they gave me a ton of chances, but I ended up getting fired for attendance. And then one night, getting berated with the V2K, this voice that sounded like Richard, my landlord, was saying like, I'm the one who called Wayfair and told them to fire your ass. Which, who knows if that's true or not? Probably not. But and then he was like, there was an element of him like trying to like recruit me for whatever they were doing, like trying to conscript me to like work for him. He's like, I don't care what you do, just make me money. And I considered it. I considered like just being obedient to whatever the voices were telling me. I considered it, but thank God I had better judgment this one day. I had like 3 months paid up in rent, but I just got this thought in my head to just flee from that apartment. I left all my stuff there. I went into detox again, and like as soon as I went into detox and rehab again, everything stopped. The voices stopped. Everything stopped. I went off to a halfway house for 6 months where I had no voices, no targeting, at least that I was aware of. I moved out of that halfway house in 2021, early 2021, or no, 2022, I think, and got another like room to rent at a different place in Pittsfield. And I started drinking again. I started going out to bars. That's how usually my relapse would start. I'd trick myself into thinking, oh, now I can drink like a normal, responsible person, but that's never been the case with me. So So that's how my relapse started this time. And then I started doing harder drugs. And again, with the phones started acting by themselves. I couldn't successfully use any phone. I went through so many phones. And at one point, I literally just gave up on phones. I was like, I can't use them. I can't have a number right now, I guess. It was too complicated. And this time, man, in this apartment, there was some wild stuff that happened, like targeting wise. Like a hologram was shown to me in my field of vision, like in front of me. It was like a video of, and this is all this, like the whole story. It makes more sense, kind of, if you listen to the whole story. It's on my YouTube channel. Not bad for a target, if anybody wants to hear it. But basically, like I was just like looking. I had this flashlight that I was looking around in my room, doing the same thing I was doing in the other apartment, looking for speakers or cameras or however these people are watching me, right? And all of a sudden, I'm like holding my camera. I remember being on my knees in that room, like holding the camera, looking down, or no, holding the flashlight, looking down at the flashlight, and all of a sudden, like this video starts playing as if it's playing on the top of the flashlight. Like 2D, like I'm looking at a FaceTime video, because I see my landlord from the previous apartment, Richard's face in it, and he's like waving at me, like literally like some crystal ball type stuff. Like this guy is like looking at me on this, and it was like kind of like hazy, multicolored, almost hazy, like gasoline or fumes, kind of mirage kind of look, but also like looked like a video, like I was watching a video. And I was like, Richard, oh, I knew I wasn't done with you. And see his mouth like start laughing, and I man, it was weird. Like it almost felt like vindicating in a way to see him. Like I was like, ah, man, the relationship I'd have with my V2K like would change. Sometimes, most of the time, I'd be angry and like caustic towards it. But other times, I get so sick of that, and I'd be like, oh, please, like just leave me alone, leave me alone. Other times, I'd get obedient. Okay, I'll do what you say tonight. Like just like stop zapping me, basically. I'll do what you say. What do you want me to do? And stuff like that. And then that hologram thing. So it showed his face, he waving at me, and I'm like, geez. And then it changed from his face. He went like on the screen. He went like that, and then it shows a different clip of me earlier that day, where I was like a from behind shot of me like just doing something. It's a whole long story, but basically, so that hologram thing alone makes me think that, like, okay, I am being recorded in some capacity, whether it's by some super advanced technology or what. And hey, who knows? Maybe all that stuff was like dark spiritual stuff, dark arts. I don't know, man. I don't know to this day. But also there was like some other type stuff. You mentioned Black Mirror. There was one instance where have you ever seen the episode Playtest, where that guy he's trying this new video game technology and he gets immersed in this like super realistic simulation, and he can he thinks that everything's he's I don't know if you've ever seen that one. I had one instance like that where it looked like my door was like about to pound in. I'm just in my room. I'm like, who's there? Nobody's answering, but it looks like the door is about to give way. And then like the big armoire in the middle of my room starts like, it opens from the middle. This is the last episode of my targeting in 2022, where it looks like somebody was about to bust through my room, through my armoire, which doesn't make any sense, but it looked so real that like I jumped up and like started like closing, like with my fist closing each corner of the doors, and then the bottom one would protrude, and I kick that one until I'm shaking this big piece of furniture, and then basically like that whole, I was so terrified at that point. I'm like like I was near a window in my room, and I just yelled for help. I was like, help, help. Someone's like, I called the cops. Okay. And the cops got there with a social worker and basically just made me go to, more or less made me go into detox again. And that was August 17th of 2022. And that was the last like craziness that I've went through in relation to like targeting and gang stalking. Since then, there has been like right after I posted my videos, after about a year sober, I posted all my videos online, you know, with like no subscribers, no views, didn't give anybody the link. Like the next day at my work, there was this guy in where I was working this sketchy, he just had that NPC look to him, you know, he was simming hard. He mentioned all sorts of stuff to me, like specific to my story, and it was definitely a gang stalking thing. So there was a couple times like that, but very minor, and that didn't really bother me that much. Maybe it was just their way of letting me know they're still like keeping tabs or whatever. But yeah, so that's basically what my experience with targeting was.
Well, I mean, a lot of things that you mentioned also I can relate to, especially that sensation of thinking that someone's put cameras in your house. There was a moment where I know in the last apartment where I was at, I bought cameras, and even where I'm at now and in the other apartment, people would move in after you move in, at least in my situation.
Yeah.
And they had the neighbors in the hallway, and they would go above me usually. And it's a form of monitoring. And I saw a girl mention this on Quora, that when you are sleeping, they are monitoring your dreams. They are monitoring your thoughts and doing all sorts of sketchy stuff, which is why they try to be always in close proximity to you, depending on, I think, usually your spiritual ability. When my situation with my narrative and all this, it's like I said, it changed so much that towards the end, it was about supposedly now my phone. And then I ended up leaving 5 perfectly new phones that I'm still probably like in debt for in the apartment, because I was thinking, because they kept, they pass by you and they go, oh, it's for the phone. Oh, it's the phone. Like, so I didn't know there were NPCs yet. I didn't know anything. So I was just like, what's with the freaking phone? Like, what about my phone? Like, what, and I don't know what they did in NPC land. I don't know if they put a frequency on it that only they can hear. I don't know if their heads were buzzing. I don't know what they did, but it was supposedly the phone. And now that was the new narrative. Right.
Okay.
So I left all my phones. Like even now I have like a burner little one. And then I have one that I needed to just be able to do some things online, because we do need our smartphones nowadays to do everything. But I could definitely identify the sensation of them saying things that they saw you doing in your home, or conversations that you were having with you. Like I'm a mom, so I was just with my kids, and I'm a teacher. I worked always my entire life with early childhood, elementary, and all of this. And what I noticed is, especially after the spring of 2023, which was never happening before, was if I was too much on the gang stalkers around my house, noticing everything they were doing, if it was getting too hot for them, they would start to do things to distract me, to cause issues at work. So not issues, because I really keep to myself and I didn't really talk to anybody, but they would like do things so that kind of pull your focus in another direction. You know what I mean? So that it could lay off a little bit off of your focus on catching the other ones. So this is how I started to notice, like, this isn't about some neighborhood nonsense. This is much bigger than that. This is now people who are interested in going to and who's going to go to your job, because that demographic is not going to be in that circle. Things were not adding up. And to the point where I said, you know what? I think it got to the point, and if I tell you this, people won't believe me. I had to take a bus. I had left the city of Barcelona. I had gone to live in a small town where I had to wait a specific time for the bus and everything. It was a small little quiet town. Well, I didn't understand there were Sims. So my idea was like, what is going on? One of the Sims in my building had grabbed my niece's arm, and I knew that they were in the hallway waiting to see when I was coming from work, when I was going. And I started to notice, because I was like, if they want to sim and talk about me, they have all day to do that. Why do they have to wait till I arrive home so that I can overhear them in the hallway doing this? And, you know, she pulled my niece's arm. And when my niece told me this, you know, she was an elderly lady. I normally, because Mediterranean is different. Everybody likes to be touchy. You know, if it was for something else, I wouldn't really care. But because I knew what they were doing and they were like doing weird stuff, I filed a police report, because I said, because then if something else happens, they're going to act like, well, why didn't you say anything? Right. Yep. And there was a physical altercation, and it wasn't me, it was with the kids. So what I feel like the NPCs did, which is why it went awry, but because they did this pushed me further into my spiritual awakening, was for the other NPCs to cover that little elderly lady who did that. They tried one time on the bus. I'm coming home, and like I said, there's only one bus every hour that goes to these specific towns, because they're out on the outskirts, because I had left the city, because the city did, you know, Barcelona they got a lot of stuff going on, a lot of crime. It's, you know, it's a lovely city. I love Barcelona, but you know. And so we're on the bus. They pretend, all of these ladies who get on, a group of older women, that they're on the bus, even the bus driver. And they start to first mumble. And then I realize that the whole group of them are saying things like they're talking about me specifically, and making sure that I know that they're talking about me. Got to the point that you're on the bus and they're all talking. Like, if I were to tell, like, from a Hispanic, Latino, because I have a Latino background, if I were to say that, they would say, like, no, you're having a nervous breakdown. They purposefully did that so that if I were to tell someone, right, I would sound crazy now. And everything about that lady, they did it to cover their other little NPC friend, put it that way. But they screwed it. They screwed it. Because now I know that something is not normal with all of these little, you know, I don't know. It was kind of like waking up and seeing, like, oh my God, they're all cyborgs. Like, what is this? Because they were saying everything I was doing. The woman was sitting 2 seats behind me. I was sitting in my seat, and they were doing weird things on the bus. And that's what made me ultimately stop going to work. They were acting as if they were police officers now. It went from one demographic to, like, now officials. Like, police officers were going to plant something on me, on my kids, to, like, make it seem like I was an 8 or something. And alarms on the bus went off, and the bus driver was stopping in the middle of the road, and there were cars parked in the middle of the road. And like, I was like, what is all this spectacle? All for this little old lady named Karma, who pulled my niece's arm. But they messed up doing that, because by them doing that, I feel like it triggered something even bigger that they didn't really mean to do it, but it further pushed my spiritual awakening. And so, you know, I told I told my mom, I told my aunt, I mean, I can go into, like, I always say, you know, I have my own opinion of my mom and all of this, because people who I feel have narcissistic personality disorder, I feel like that is a demonic attachment, period. But, you know, I was telling people around me, and they're like, well, what do you mean? Even the bus driver's after you? Like, because this is where it's supposed to be. Yeah. So that if you repeat it, it sounds absurd.
Yep.
And part of the reason why I do what I do is because that's a very dirty trick. And what I feel like these people have been doing, especially these NPCs, is that, especially in this region, because I feel like every ley line, every area is different as far as the aggressivity of the NPCs, of what they do. Because in the States, I feel like as a whole, I feel like we're also more awake. So they got to do a little bit more with the technology and all this versus in certain areas. But I feel like, imagine how many people they've done that to. Imagine how many people with souls from the body of Christ, and I say body of Christ not because they're Christian, but because you probably have that soul connection with God. So imagine how many chosen ones and people with souls that they've played that trick on, that you think that you're having a spiritual awakening, you're starting to wake up from this, but they make you feel like you're crazy, so that you go back into medication, you go back into hospital. And in your situation,
that thought makes me sick. Like, how many people think they're schizophrenic? That's like the worst thing of all this, is how many people they've deceived, you know.
Because it's an issue of awakening. I feel that they're trying to push you down so that if you go, and and I'll tell you a little bit later, but what they do in the States is a little bit different, because I think in the States, because they know that we're so much more awakened to some degree, what is done is that they try to, they don't lie. So they make it seem like it's plausible. They talk about, that yes, this exists, and yes, this technology exists. And then what happens is that you form a trust. So this is why it's tricky when certain people claim to be targeted individuals, because you say, okay, yeah, or people come out and say, yeah, this exists, and we're going to do awareness, and it's this technology, and it's this, because it's like they have to agree with you. So you gain a trust, because they know that if they deny it completely, we're not dumb. So they kind of agree with you to get your trust, but just enough that when you do really start spiritual awakening too much, they're there to like say, well, I don't think it's that. And then you trust them. So you say, well, maybe they're right. And you dumb down on certain ideas. In your situation, I understand it's different. And I also feel that the whole thing with maybe using alcohol, using drugs, obviously from a spiritual perspective, you know that's giving license. That's giving license to fornication.
Yeah.
That's giving license to the enemy, and he will attack you, and he'll say, you see, I can do it because look. Plus, besides this, you know that the heart of the drugs is pharmakia. You know that that's synthetic. So all of those kind of things, they kind of, I don't know about psychedelic, but they open your mind up. So you're going to be seeing things. Now, one thing I want to ask you, I know you said you saw like the Hat Man and the demonic things around you, because the cult plays into it. They are it's satanic. But what I wanted to ask you was, you as a person, before this all started, did you have any kind of psychic abilities?
No.
Did you dream anything? Were you a child that you saw anything that you can recall?
No, I honestly, I don't have a good memory of my childhood. My memory is I don't know if it's probably from all the drugs I've done over the years, has really suffered. So I don't remember my childhood very much. So, but no, but I'd love to say like, yeah, I've had all these special abilities, but honestly, none that I can think of. I mean, I have plenty of attributes that I feel like God's blessed me with, but nothing like supernatural that I've noticed.
Okay, that's fine, because I just sometimes ask that because I notice, like I said, those are usually the some of the factors that would make someone begin to notice that they're being targeted. As far as you and explaining these things to some of your family and friends, what were their reactions when you told them?
So I spent a lot of time with a pen and paper and a notebook, writing everything that I could remember down, getting it in somewhat of a chronological order to the best of my ability, and then just making my videos. I made like 3 30-minute videos, and that was a huge help for me, because I was sick of like telling little bits and pieces to my parents and my brother, and I was sick of just telling little. I was like, I need to like do this right. I spent hours and hours getting my testimony down on paper, and then so when I recorded my videos, I just read from my notes. I just read my whole story, and that was great for me. I shared it with my parents, who both believe me. I grew up in a Christian house, so they definitely think it was like a demonic attack. But that's fine. You know, they were like, wow, I'm so sorry you went through all that, Stephen. My dad said, man, God has truly like plucked you out of the fire. I remember those words encouraged me, because I agree, he did. I mean, for years I was like living in squalor, and I'm better than that, man. And now I like remember that. Like now I have, my life's not perfect, but I'm consistent now. I consistently see my son. I have him 2 nights a week. I'm able to hold a job, never call out. Have a car, my own apartment. And to most people, that's like, basic adult stuff. But for me, that's like a huge accomplishment. Anyway, I did want to. There's one part in my story that was like the first comment you had on it. I just want to bring up about like a neighbor moving in downstairs. There was in that first apartment. There was one. It was this girl, Alyssa, and I remember, and this was like when all this stuff started getting weird. I get a knock on my door, and it's that girl, Alyssa. She was an attractive woman. She just knocked on my door with a bottle of wine and was like, "Hey, what's going on? I just moved in downstairs. Do you want to hang out?" Which is like, which really doesn't happen. Like that's never happened before or since. But it happened then, and she was definitely like what people call like honeypots or whatever. So yeah, I definitely feel like her role was to keep tabs on me. There was multiple times I'd be hanging out with her downstairs in her apartment, and I'd like catch her in these like weird lies. And I wish I could remember what they were, but like I remember like each time I'd like my stomach would drop. I'd be like, "Wait, you just said I thought you said that you didn't." Like I'd catch her in lies all the time. There was one night, like I leave her apartment, I go upstairs, and I pass out drunk, and I wake up in the middle of the night to her in my and mind you, we were not that close. We had like hung out mostly as friends. We like hooked up a couple times, but we were not at the level where I woke up in the middle of the night to her hand in my bed, her hand on my crotch, saying like vulgar things to the point where I was like, "Dude, like what are you doing here? Get out." So you mentioned how they like people might keep tabs or mess with your sleep and stuff. Like that's a true story that happened when in the beginning of when all this stuff got weird. So I don't know if you've ever had any like any people sent your way that were like not genuine honeypots or whatever. Have you ever experienced that?
Not directly touching me, but yes, agents, because this is what happens. The enemy sends people in your direction to cause distraction, to cause drama. They will try to get friends from your past, relative, whoever. They are being sent as agents, okay? And this is why a lot of people, and this is why I've had so much trouble with these podcasts, because I feel like when you've had so much of this happen to you, all of this trauma, all of these experiences, all of these betrayals, you are so scared to really introduce anyone new into your life, because you're like, okay, you have to, but this is why it's very important to, in my opinion, build that connection with God and form discernment.
Yes.
And, I fast, I pray 3 a.m. in the morning. And it's when I started praying the 3 a.m. prayers is when it got intense. That was in that spring of 2023. Whatever I was doing was breaking strongholds, unraveling, I don't know what was going on, but those 3 years were calm until I started doing that 3 a.m. in the morning prayer. And I started fasting. And then it's like, it's like I started that spiritual warfare. And I just want to tell you, don't you dare think that what you're doing is basic. I'm very happy that you are sober, and it's basic, but it's you've been through a lot, because that is spiritual warfare. Mm-hmm. And just to let you know, one of the things that happened when I moved, especially to the new apartment where I'm at now, within weeks moving into this apartment with my kids, the police knocked on my door asking about a neighbor that was from the demographic, like just trying to bring your memory back to the narrative, even from another country. And my lights were cut off for 2 days, with me and my children in here. Because supposedly the neighbors made a mistake. You know what I mean? So just a lot of little quirky things but I overheard them simming about, because they were upset that I was publishing books. So and it's like anything you do is a problem for the enemy. Anything you're doing that's in a positive way is it upsets. So just like all of these things started happening, and I would go to my mom and I would go to my friend, like, do you see this happening? And I'm not in Barcelona. Do you see this happening? And I'm not here, because I'm showing people. I'm like, there is a direct attempt at sabotaging my finances, because they go for your finances, my well, obviously your reputation, but just trying to make you lower your vibration, get you off track, and like I said, sending people your way to pull you into agreement with the enemy. Now, there was one time I was on the train, and like I said, I know some French, basic French. So it was kind of good because when I left Barcelona, since I'm not fluent in French, I didn't really, that was the greatest thing because I could block them out because I didn't really know what they were saying all the time.
Perfect.
So, yeah, so they started just kind of saying words repetitively, especially in Spanish. Now I'm in France, saying words, like I said, a lot of things. I did a video with Nathan Reynolds. A lot of it is very similar to MK Ultra. Similar words so that you hear it. It's demonic. And they would say some words in Spanish that are not in French so that I would understand. And there was one time I was getting on a train and I just kept hearing the word.
They'd mix Spanish and French?
They were mixing Spanish words that were keywords so that I definitely would recognize it since I don't know French. And they need to keep it going, right? I don't know. Whatever these NPCs did in Spain, they messed it up for France. I sometimes say maybe God kept me in Barcelona close by, but the war is going to be here in France. So right at the right moment, he brought me in this side because it was just random how I even ended up here. I only ended up in this part of France because it was the only booking apartment that accepted my cats. I left everything. I left my job. I left everything after those bus incidents and all of that. And as I was saying, so one of the things that I thought was so interesting was when I was oh my goodness, I lost track of my thought. What was I saying before? Yeah, so the code word. Sorry. So yeah, I thought it was so interesting. I was on the train and the girls, there were a group of girls because over here in France, it's been a lot of teenagers too, which was weird because it was a different group. It was more adults, but never children. Never a child has done these kind of things. So it's teenagers and old people. So I started saying, what does that old lady have to do with this narrative? What is that? So these teenage girls were on the train and I just kept hearing them say, play a ball, like joue ballon, like something like that, jouer ballon, like play ball. And in my head, telepathically, I said to myself, I don't make deals with the devil. And then they would go, tuer, like to kill. So these were things, it's demonic.
Yeah.
Demonic. They didn't have any phones on them. Everything is telepathic in the spiritual realm. Okay. And I know that because I have in the past, I have said it before. I have been the type of person who would go to, I have a Latin background. I know a lot about like Santeria and all of these other kind of things. So I know profoundly how it works. And, when it started happening, I was like, did my daughter's dad put me in some timeline? Like, what is this? A Twilight Zone? Like, when I started realizing they could understand my thoughts, I said, what is it? So it really tells you that this world is so much of a farce. We don't have too much time, but I really want to make sure I get your testimony in as far as you recovering and how God has helped you and the Holy Spirit has helped you to overcome all of this, at least up until this point.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he changed something in me this time. This targeting experience, I mean, I was like left shaken up after the second time. I'm like, man, the last 2 times I've used drugs, all this, like, drugs are weird now. I still didn't know what a targeted individual was, but like every time I use now, I'm getting all this extra stuff, like monitoring, V2K, or, things have gotten really weird. So I was like, I didn't really want to be sober, but I was like, I can't keep going back to that. I was so sick of like getting my life in order. Like I would get like 3 to 7 months clean, get a job, be at a halfway house, doing good. And then I'd relapse and lose it all. And it takes a long time to like get to that. It takes a long time. You have to start from scratch. I've done that so many times and I just was like, no, I can't do it anymore. This time I'm going to I'm going to just stop fighting. I'm going to stop fighting, recovery. So I just like got with the program. I was like, you know what? Like, I'm not happy being sober, but like, I'm going to keep building for stuff. And, that's how it happened. I went to a halfway house in Pittsfield, in 2022, and I just did it the way I was supposed to. After 8 weeks there, I got a job. I just stuck with it, really, is because I couldn't bear the thought of starting over again, losing everything and starting from square one. So, and it gets easier, man. It gets easier to like stay away from that, especially as you get things. Like I have You know, right now I have my own apartment, my car, a good job in recovery, and my son in my life. And my son who looks up to me so much, and who I got sober just in time for him to not remember how I was when I was using and drinking. Like, but so now if I get a thought of like using, which it still happens, like I'll get that urge, but like I think about like, okay, first of all, like you work in recovery. If you show up to work after even using just once, people know me. It changes you. It changes you way quicker than people like to admit. My son would definitely know. I'd lose the apartment, I'd lose my car, and I'd have to start over. So I just stopped fighting against recovery and just got with the program. And I prayed a lot. I was on my knees for a while there, every morning and every night. In the morning, God, please keep me away from a drink and drug today, please. And then at the end at night, God, thank you for keeping me away from a drink and drug. Some version of that every night with sincerity, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, that's the main idea, is that, yeah, like we have to call on him and he's listening to us at all times. And like you said, you work in that now. So that might be what your calling is. Your calling is to be the example to other people who are going through or are going through the things that you've been through, and show them that it is possible to make that change. And even that is a win for the kingdom of God. So I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy that you're doing better. And I hope it at least continues that way, and that you can continue to bring other people out of that situation. I know I'll say also a prayer for you, and I want to also just thank you so much for coming on and speaking to me, because it isn't very easy to get a lot of people to be honest and sincere and come on and discuss all of these kind of things that have happened to them. So thank you, Stephen, for joining me. And for those wanting to learn more about Stephen, his music, or hear more about his stories, you can find the links in the podcast description below. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to sacredmindshift.com so you never miss an event or another exciting discussion. And God bless you, Stephen.
Thank you. Bye.